What's up, everybody? Welcome to Court Vision Episode 2. I'm David Lurie, and welcome to March. So we all know March is about tournament time. But before we get to the real madness, I wanted to revisit the imaginary tournament that I wrote about a couple of weeks ago called the America's Cup. So you're probably asking, what is the America's Cup? It's basically the FIFA World Cup, except for basketball. And instead of countries competing against one another, it's just the states. So in the article that I wrote, I took that premise and I ran with it. I ended up imagining what the tournament structure would look like, and I forecasted what my ideal rosters would look like for each participating state. So just allow me to quickly run through the ground rules. When building the teams, a couple of rules that I set up. One was that every participating player in the tournament had to currently be on an NBA roster. Secondly, for a player to represent a state, they had to either be born in that state, grew up in that state, or played high school or college basketball in that state. So generally, when I was making the teams, I favored the state where a player was born in or grew up in when deciding what team they'd be aligned to. But the high school and college criteria did allow me to make a few exceptions. To put it more bluntly, it just allowed me to get a couple more superstars in the tournament. And then also on the roster front. So the maximum roster size for each state is 13 players, and a state needed at least 7 players to qualify for the America's Cup. So all in all, that left me with qualified rosters for 26 different states. It's a bit of a strange number, but the best tournament structure I could think of is kind of like the European Championships in soccer. So that format currently has 24 teams split into 6 groups of 4 teams each. Every team plays a round robin, and then the top 2 teams in each group automatically advance to a single elimination knockout stage. The only weird thing about that is that gets us to 12 teams for the knockout round. So 4 of the group winners are going to get buys in the first round. It's going to be totally randomized, as you'll soon see. And then lastly, of course, we have 26 teams, not 24 exactly. Just imagine the 4 worst teams to make the tournament have to compete in a play-in to snag the final spots in the America's Cup. Okay, so enough of laying out what the America's Cup is. What exactly are we going to be doing on today's show? So my dear friend, my co-host, John Iezzi, he's going to be joining me. Get used to that. He's probably going to be the only guy joining me on the show for the foreseeable future. But what we're going to do is randomize the tournament field and project how we think this tournament would play out in real life. So as we go through the bracket, we're not going to be making the assumption that everyone read my article. We're just going to talk about, details on which states qualified, the players on each of the teams, and overall just make sure we're adding the proper amount of context to the predictions that we make. So with that, I think we're ready to go. I'm going to bring in John.
Yo.
What's up, buddy? How we doing, man?
I'm fired up to be back. This is the best time of the year. We were talking about it before, but I'm giddy. I'm just so excited. I got back earlier today from watching our Virginia Tech Hokies women's basketball team bring home their first ever ACC championship. I roll back to Greensboro on Tuesday for the ACC tournament. We'll be there all week. And then the brackets are released. It's conference tournament week. It's March Madness. It doesn't get any better. This is truly the best time of the year. We've crossed the chasm. We've gone through the month of February. We've dealt with our little period of time without football, and we're here, baby.
Yeah, man. I am absolutely pumped. I consider this like a little bit of like a precursor to, our March Madness activities, which we'll be getting to focus on pretty soon. But as far as kind of getting this bracket randomizer and prediction going, just one thing, just to make sure you're good with it. We had 4 wildcard teams. It was Virginia, Arkansas, Minnesota, and Nevada. I decided to knock out Minnesota and Nevada for this play-in round that we're simulating. For folks listening in, Minnesota had like Chet Holmgren, the Jones brothers, David Roddy. They were pretty trash. Nevada had like Kelly Oubre Jr. and Christian Wood. They were like a little bit better, but they had no point guard. I think Corey Joseph, who I didn't even realize was still in the NBA, was the only point guard on the roster, at least from the research that I did. So I knocked those two out. You good with that, John?
Yeah, Minnesota, man. They're a little scrappy with my guy Jalen Suggs, but I don't think they were beating Virginia or Arkansas, so I was good with the decisions that you made.
Yeah, better luck next time. I mean, just even making the play-in is a big achievement. Half the states didn't make this thing.
Exactly. Before we get into this, I need to just say, incredible concept by you. Yeah, absolutely incredible concept. Your article, if anybody's watching this and hasn't read it, you have to go read it. It got me so fired up at the thought of this. Like maybe one day this could be a reality. Like who do we need to talk to make this happen? Because there's so much state pride out there that exists, right? You're telling me guys wouldn't be go fired up to show that New York basketball is the best, or California basketball is the best, or Texas basketball is the best. Not everybody's good enough to go play for the United States with how much talent exists in our country, but a lot of guys would be good enough to go play for their state. And your article got me really fired up at the thought of this concept existing one day. Maybe it's Bill Simmons who needs to start pushing this forward. I don't know who.
Yeah,
but
he's a sports star.
I'm excited to dive into this.
I will say it wasn't my original idea. It was like Jay Caspian Kang, I think, tweeted it during the World Cup final, and I was like, I'm rolling with this.
We'll let you take credit for it.
Yeah, whatever. I'll take secondary credit. That's fine. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I got this like bracket generator fired up.
Oh, baby.
So I put all 24 teams in here that qualified. What I'm going to do is randomize the fields so that the groups are randomized. I'm going to click this button 5 times.
And Dave, you sorted these teams by strength, correct?
I didn't end up doing that just because
wow.
I was a little bit limited by like the platforms I could find. So yeah, this could be like the best, all 4 of the best teams at least that we could be in the same group. We have no idea. It's gonna be chaos. It's gonna be chaos. Yeah, let's go. So let me start this baby up, and let's take a look at the groups. All right. So it looks like Group A is Wisconsin, South Carolina, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. That's a stacked group.
That's a pretty solid group. That's a really solid group.
So, man, who do we think is winning this one? So, for some context on these teams, Wisconsin has Tyrese Halliburton, Tyler Herro, and Jordan Poole for some of the key guys on that team. Maryland has Kevin Durant. South Carolina has Ja Morant and Zion. Pennsylvania, I think they have Jalen Brunson, Kyle Lowry.
Villanova.
Yeah, they're just Villanova too. Like basically, like graduated Villanova NBA players. Man, I kind of feel like I really like Pennsylvania's team. When I was kind of writing out the article, but I put Maryland a tier higher just because of the Durant factor. Like he can just raise the floor of your team to such a degree. And in like a short burst of a tournament like this, I'm definitely more so favoring, the most talented players just put their states on their back and carry them through. And he doesn't have scrubs by his side either. He's got Jeremy Grant, Josh Hart, Markelle Fultz, Victor Oladipo, Emmanuel Quickly. Like he's got some guys. So for me, I think that's the team I'd have winning the group. But curious what you think.
I'd be curious while we're on the conversation of Maryland. When you look through I was really curious, like who would be your starting 5 on that team? When I was really trying to think through it, I was struggling to figure that out for Maryland. I don't know how. I mean, you can make the pieces of the puzzle fit together, and obviously you have Kevin Durant. So whenever you have Kevin Durant, you're competitive in any game in this sort of situation. But I'd be curious to see who you would pair around Kevin Durant.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like I'd start Markel Fultz. He's just like a true point guard, whereas I feel like quickly he's a little bit better coming off the bench as like a spark plug scorer. He's not really a facilitator as much. I think you got to start Jeremy Grant. He's giving you 20 a game. I think Josh Hart's got to be in there. I mean, we've already seen the impact he's having on the Knicks after joining them at the trade deadline. I don't think they've lost since he joined the team. Obviously Durant, so that's 4. And then, man, do you like? I think you got to start Jalen Smith just to take some of that like defensive burden off of Durant to start the game. But I feel like that's one of their weaknesses, right? Durant's going to be
Yep.
playing the 5 a lot. He's going to be like banging bodies in the post. He's going to have to. He's going to have to carry this team on both sides of the court. So as far as starting 5 on your end, I mean, is that close to what you were thinking? They got a few wings beyond that.
Mine would be similar. When we're talking about this group, like if, I know you had Maryland ranked a tier higher. I like Pennsylvania and South Carolina's teams better. I think if I had to pick a team to come out of this group as the 1 seed, I love South Carolina's team. And now I know that they only have 7 guys, right? And as this tournament progresses on, like that will hurt them. But when you talk about in the playoffs in the NBA, you really only need like a 7-8 man rotation as you get deep into the postseason. Look at South Carolina's starting lineup. You have pieces that fit together pretty well. You could start Ja, Chris Middleton, Torrey Craig, Zion, and Nick Claxton. Like, you at least have a couple different bodies that you'd be throwing against Kevin Durant. Hello, my wife just got home. She's back. Yeah. But you would have a bunch of different bodies that you could at least throw at Kevin Durant. And I just don't know who on Maryland would be able to guard the combination of guys that South Carolina has in a 1-game situation. So when I talk about or think about Pennsylvania's team, first of all, let's just assume that Jay Wright is the coach.
I love that. Yeah.
But if you're starting like a lineup of Brunson, maybe DiVincenzo at the 2, Bridges at the 3, DeAndre Hunter at the 4, Jalen Durant at the 5, probably what you're looking at with maybe like Kyle Lowry and Cam Johnson coming off the bench. That's just a super fun team. I think that game, Kevin Durant's obviously the best player on the floor. I don't know who would win that game.
All right, dude, this is – and
like
we haven't even talked about Wisconsin. Wisconsin's out for sure, and they're a pretty good team.
They've got 3 really good guards, but they're done.
They're done.
They won't, like, between Poole, Halliburton, and Hero, they'd be able to score, but they couldn't defend any of these teams, the other 3 teams that we're talking about.
I love your point about South Carolina as like in the group stage, super dangerous before attrition. Like they only have 7 players.
Right.
That's the main reason why I don't have them.
One of them's PJ Dozier.
And one of them's Zion. Yeah, one of them's PJ Dozier and one of them's Zion Williamson, who stays on the court for like 2 seconds every year. So
they are the only team. They're the only team in this field that have 2 of the top 8 trade value guys on the same roster. If you go through Bill Simmons' trade value column that he put
I just
out,
want to see them go through.
Yeah, I think that they go through. I think that they have to go through.
I'm putting them as the group winner. You convince me. But
I like it.
We got to figure out. Oh, crap. Did I put Pennsylvania? Whoops. Need to adjust that. We need to figure out who's coming out between Maryland and Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania has the better overall team, right?
Yeah.
But I can we really knock out Kevin Durant in the group stage?
That's what I was going to say I don't know how we can say that Kevin Durant's not going to make it through the first round. He has a good enough players around him that with him as the, center point, we were talking about him earlier today. Like he can fit in any situation to maximize the team around him.
I'm putting them through, and like
that's a damn good game.
It's one of the best. It's probably the best group. Like I'd be surprised if one of these groups actually is better than the one we just talked about. One thing on Pennsylvania, if Jay Wright's the coach, he's got a couple natties in his bag at Villanova. He also lost early in a few tournaments. Like Villanova were known as chokers before they got over the hump, which says a lot about how we cover sports as a society and these labels that we put on teams, right? But
yeah, it's another
I feel
conversation.
okay with knocking Jay Wright out. I'm sorry. I love that team, but tough draw.
Before we move on, I think if this was actually being played out in real life, this would probably be a situation where the teams would go 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, and it would come down to some sort of tiebreaker. I'm in that situation. Give me the best players that are in this group, which is Kevin Durant and then Ja Morant and Zion to advance. I think I'm content with that being the case.
Yep. Great point. Let's take Group B. So we got Ohio, Arizona, Michigan, and Missouri. This group is loaded too. So Ohio has LeBron, and he's got some guys with him. He's got CJ McCollum, I think. Whoops.
There's going to be some teams.
He's got CJ McCollum, Terry Rozier, Larry Nance Jr. Missouri's got Jason Tatum and Bradley Beal. Michigan's got Devin Booker, the Wagner brothers, Kyle Kuzma, Draymond, and they're good. I think Arizona's definitely the odd team out, like no question. They have Lauri Markkanen and DeAndre Ayton, two guys that played at Arizona, but I mean, Ty Washington was their only point guard.
One of my notes on here was like when your projected starting ball handler is a guy averaging 14 minutes and 4.9 points on 22% shooting from three for the 14 and 59 Rockets, you're going to be in trouble in this tournament. And the fact that they landed in the group that they landed in, I think that we can dismiss them similar to how I would dismiss them even more than we dismissed Wisconsin in the last group.
Oh, no question. So I'm just going to go through and pick them to lose every game.
I will say, though, I have one thing to add.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this team should have included Benedict Mathurin.
Man, I think I just flat out missed that.
Benny, because he
went to Arizona. Yeah,
he went to Arizona.
I went through the first time, and I didn't. The college rules, I wasn't really counting, unless it was like a player couldn't make the team in the state they were born in. But I never swept back through and looked through players like Benny Mathurin that I probably just missed.
He doesn't make this team. He doesn't make this team good enough to advance out of the group.
No, I agree. Between Ohio, Michigan, and Missouri, that's a tough one. I mean, you have LeBron, Jason Tatum, and Devin Booker as the three leaders of those teams. I just think LeBron would be motivated on another level in this tournament. Like, with everything happening from a legacy perspective with him and like this hopeless Lakers situation that he's in,
I think
this tournament would be huge.
This Missouri matchup would be interesting. You know, I think that Missouri, I don't know. I came away a little underwhelmed by Ohio's team, but they have LeBron, right? Like Team Missouri, when Saban Lee is your number 2 listed orchestrator, like
I have no idea who that is.
I was originally dismissive of them. Like my first time reading through and thinking about this, I was originally dismissive of them. But then I started building out the lineup and I was like, Beal, Tatum, Michael Porter Jr., Anunoby, and they don't really have any size. Jeremiah Robinson Earl. So they probably end up losing. I mean, but like Tatum carry them past Team Ohio. It's not like LeBron's team is so unbelievable.
So many wing defenders. Like they could throw OG on LeBron, Tatum on LeBron,
and
Otto Porter.
LeBron, like he's got some decent role players, but I mean, if you were to say, I mean, he has CJ McCollum. If you were to say, I think Missouri has 6 of the best or 4 of the 6 best guys on the court, I would say. Besides LeBron and CJ McCollum, they would have the 4 other best guys on the court.
Yeah. The thing about Missouri, besides the lack of a true point guard too, though, is their only rim protectors, Jeremiah Robinson Earl.
Right.
So
right.
He's 6'9".
We need a supernatural performance from him.
And Jason Tatum, isn't capable of being a two-way guy like Durant is. At least like Jason Tatum's a wing defender. He's a great wing defender, but if you start asking him to protect the rim or like OG Anunoby, I mean, what's going to happen to them defensively? And I feel better about Ohio because at least they have some real rim protectors. At least they have Larry Nance Jr. and Jackson Hayes, like true center, you know?
It's true.
And we haven't even talked about Michigan.
Yeah, let's talk. They're starting
a balanced team.
So interesting. To me, they probably go big, I would say, probably to start. Monty Morris is a solid point guard, though. So maybe let's say you start Monty Morris. You could go Morris, Booker, Kuzma, Franz Wagner, and Draymond. And that's a team that can space the floor. Like, that's a team that, with Draymond, at least defensively, like, you know, undersized, but can at least protect the rim. And they have some depth inside between all those guys. You know, Isaiah Jackson, Tillman, Mo Wagner, JaVale. Like, that's a big team.
To me, they don't have the star power that Ohio and Missouri bring to the table, but they still have stars. And I think they're just the most balanced, best, deepest team in the group, in my opinion. So I think we got to have them winning the group, and we got to knock out either LeBron or Jason Tatum. Are you in agreement?
I think we have to take out. Yeah, I would agree. And I think that we have Ohio advance because I think what you said about the rim protection for Team Missouri, like they don't have anybody that can protect the rim, and they have no depth inside.
Right.
While it's hard for me to say that Tatum's going to get knocked out in the first round, like I love how switchable they are with some of the. They don't have enough.
Holes are bigger than what the other teams
have. They don't have enough size.
Yeah. That's again, they easily could have made it through in most groups, I feel like.
I think Michigan. So we said Michigan wins the group, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Michigan wins. Ohio's the 2 seed. How long? So I have this note written down. Do we make it out of pool play before LeBron starts making veiled comments about how the America's Cup committee is against him since Steph was assigned to Team North Carolina instead of Team Ohio? Akron.
That was one of the big what ifs I went back and forth. Steph just primarily grew up in North Carolina,
Steph has to be in Team North Carolina. But LeBron, you know that LeBron, the first time they have a tough loss against Michigan where they're the 2 seed coming out of that bracket, he's going to be like, it would be nice if I had Steph Curry on my team.
Yeah. Well, let's say even before the tournament, nobody recruits like LeBron. Could he sway Curry to play for Ohio in a real-life situation?
Steph has to play for Team North Carolina.
He's got to. He played for Davidson. His dad played for the Hornets. He
grew up in Charlotte. He's a North Carolina legend, and I'm not biased at all by the fact that I currently live in North Carolina.
As long as you're letting the people know, John.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next group. What do we got in group?
Kentucky, Tennessee, Massachusetts, and Washington. So this is a significantly weaker group than the two that we just discussed.
Yep.
I think. Man, off the top of your head, I think Washington's the best team in the group. They have keep me honest here. They got DeJounte Murray.
This has got to be the weakest group. This has got to be the weakest group in the field. Washington, they have Paolo.
Yep.
They have Paolo, DeJounte Murray, Zach LaVine, and they're probably the team that's going to win this group. I would say I would bet on them above them all. They have Jaden and Jalen McDaniels. They have Matisse Thybulle. They have Gary Payton. So they've got some switchable good wings, and Kelly Olynyk is their only big. But if Washington was in either of the above two groups, they're not advancing. This is luck of the draw. They're getting to play. They're getting to play in a group with Massachusetts, whose star player is Reggie Jackson, and Kentucky, whose star players are Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell. Give me Paolo, DeJounte Murray, Zach LaVine, and some combination of all those other wings to be the champion of that group.
Yeah. And I got Massachusetts coming in last. So So it comes down to Kentucky or Tennessee. Uh, Tennessee has Darius Garland and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, right?
Yeah, they have my boy Nikhil in there too,
Yeah, because
which
him and Shea are cousins.
I think I have to be honest about Team Tennessee. This probably says something bad about me, and so maybe I'm in the wrong here. I have no clue who Garrison Matthews is. I just needed to say it.
He played for the Wizards for a little bit.
I consider myself a pretty educated fan. I have no
he's
clue
pretty
who Garrison
random.
Matthews is.
He's not Saban Lee random. You know what I mean?
True. He speaks, but it speaks to the lack of depth on Team Tennessee, but they still have top end talent that's going to help them get out of this group. Like
we got to
plan, and we have to get Luke Cornett and his elite level closeouts into the elimination stage. We have to get him there.
And also,
Darius Garland, he's with Garland and Shea, like in crunch time playing together, similar little setup to Garland and Donovan Mitchell. It's a good team. It's a solid team.
Yeah. No doubt. And I can in good conscience advance a team led by D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns past the group stage. I just can't do it.
Correct. No chance.
Right. So we got Washington wins the group. Tennessee advances in second. All right, Group D.
Luck of the draw right there.
Luck of the draw. All right, we got Indiana, Georgia, Texas, and Virginia.
What a freaking group.
It's a good group. Virginia's toast. Virginia is toast.
No, Virginia is toast, which is unfortunate. Cam Thomas is going to be shooting the ball 60 times a game, but they have no shot. This is really unfortunate for Indiana because I like this Indiana team a lot. And they're pretty good. And couldn't you just see Desmond Bane like having a coming out party in this situation for this team? Like, if you go look at Indiana's roster, I would say their starting lineup is probably Conley, Desmond Bane, Gordon Hayward, Sohan, and probably Jaren Jackson Jr.
Probably Jaren Jackson Jr.
Okay, sorry, I forgot. Definitely Jaren
Sohan, maybe.
You love Triple J.
Oh, come on. I mean, he's getting the starting spot for sure.
Yeah, you're right. 100%. You're right. That I will not let my bias against Triple J, all the money these cost me by getting in foul trouble, blind me. You're right. But Indiana has no chance against they have no chance against Georgia or against Texas.
Yeah, I think
they're a really good team.
They're solid. So let's talk about Texas first, because I think they're, if not the best or one of the favorites to win the tournament. They're like second or third. I mean, they're stacked. Yeah. Jimmy Butler, Pascal Siakam, Julius Randle, Trae Young, De'Aaron Fox, Marcus Smart, Jarrett Allen, Miles Turner. I mean, they got all-star level guys at every level of the floor, So I think they're definitely winning this group. We probably agree on that. Any other thoughts on Texas, though?
I really like both Texas and Georgia. I agree that Texas is the better team. This is one of those teams where, at the very elite level of this tournament, you start to have some really fun discussions about who's going to start for these teams. And so let me bill this to you. Yeah. If I'm looking at this team and I'm the coach of this team, I don't start Trae Young.
I think you're right in theory, but man, how's Trae Young going to take that? I mean, he's already been kind of a coach killer in Atlanta. Yeah, I guess you got to say, suck it up. We got to win the America's Cup, man.
I'm putting Marcus Smart in my starting five.
For sure. I mean, I'm biased.
Yeah, but Marcus Smart's a winner. I'm putting winner Marcus Smart in my starting five. And the conversation really then becomes, are you starting Trae Young or are you starting De'Aaron Fox? And you know me, I'm a big De'Aaron Fox guy, have been ever since we saw him crying after the loss in the Elite Eight. De'Aaron Fox is my guy. Yeah. And to me, I just think he meshes better with the rest of the guys on this team. Trae Young can be a guy that comes in off the bench and is a guy that takes a bunch of shots with the second unit when you've got Jordan Clarkson's on this team too, but let Trae Young be the heat check shooting guy. If I'm the coach, I'm starting De'Aaron Fox, Marcus Smart, Jimmy Butler, Julius Randle, and Pascal Siakam. And I'm bringing Jared Allen off the bench quickly. If I want to get a little bigger, I'm bringing Trae Young off the bench. If I want to get a little smaller, that's a damn good team.
Yeah. They're like, I feel like they're going to have an attitude too, right? Like if this tournament were actually happening, any team led by Jimmy Butler kind of carries itself a certain
Jimmy
way.
Butler and Marcus Smart together.
And Marcus Smart, yeah, like they got dogs, man. And Julius Randle's a tank. Miles Turner's a good backup center. I mean, he just hit like 8 threes playing the Celtics a couple weeks ago. I was like, what the heck's going on?
We can talk a little more about Georgia when we get to their tournament matchup, because I really do like that team, but I don't think that they're better than they can't beat Texas, but I think they're the clear second place team.
Yeah, good call on that. We can hold off on Georgia. I guess for the audience's sake, they got Anthony Edwards and Jaylen Brown are the 1-2 combo over there, and they have guys at all three levels too. So they definitely advance. We'll talk about them some more, but let's go to Group E. Kansas, Oregon, Illinois, and North Carolina. So I think North Carolina is going to absolutely destroy every single team in this group.
Yeah, they got a good group. My boys.
North Carolina,
through.
Their shooting, man. I mean, they have Steph Curry, casually the greatest shooter of all time, but they got guys on the wing too. I wrote about it in my article. So Seth Curry would be on the team. He shoots over 42% from three. Grant Williams has been slumping for the Celtics lately, but he can be a sniper at times. Trey Murphy's a good shooter. Brandon Ingram is just a good, like a star level secondary scorer. They have Chris Paul. So we'd see Chris Paul and Steph Curry playing together. Bam Adebayo. I mean, again, another team that's so loaded. The main question is who's the starting five.
Yeah.
You'd have to start Chris Paul and Steph Curry together. You'd be giving up some size, but like those two together offensively would just be like chef's kiss. You got to start Ingram. You got to start Bam. Who's the fifth guy? I guess, man, normally I'd say Seth Curry, but that's kind of giving up some size. Do you go
too small if you start Seth Curry, I think.
Do you go PJ Tucker?
So I had this same
Trey
conversation
Murphy?
with myself, and I actually settled on Grant Williams. That's who I settled on. And maybe I'm wrong, but I was debating between Grant Williams, PJ Tucker, and Trey Murphy, and I ultimately settled on Grant Williams just to provide a little bit. Like, he's a better scorer than PJ Tucker. They're comparable enough defensively. And for that fourth slot, you're really looking for somebody who can help you pick up a little bit of the slack defensively that you're going to, Steph and CP3 are going to play hard defensively, but you're giving up something size-wise there. And I kind of liked Trey Murphy's more of an offensive guy. PJ Tucker's more of a defensive guy. Grant Williams kind of gives you a little bit of both. I just kind of thought he fit in there, but that's an interesting discussion.
Yeah, and looking at the group that they landed in, I actually think Grant Williams could make a lot of sense. Like, he's a really good big man defender. Like, the Celtics utilize him in matchups with Embiid and Giannis. Illinois' got Anthony Davis, so Grant Williams could kind of bear the brunt of that wrecking ball, right? Oregon's got Sabonis. So I like where you're coming from there. I think it'd probably be Grant or PJ Tucker. That kind of transitions to who we think is coming in second here. So Illinois got Fred VanVleet, Pat Bev, Anthony Davis. They got some wings that are like okay. Max Strus, Covington. They're like an all right team. I don't think they're definitely not getting out of those really strong Group A and Group B.
They got the benefit of the doubt being in a relatively weak group.
Yeah, I hate Kansas's team. It doesn't even make sense on paper.
I do too. I have so many. My note on Kansas was, can they play their games in Allen Fieldhouse? Because if they want to have any shot at all, they would have to. They have, unironically, this team has Dean Wade, Jabari Walker, and Svi Mikhailuk on it. That's usually not a good sign. Yeah. I think that they're probably in last place, but Oregon is a little interesting. I'm not the biggest fan of Team Illinois in general, but I think in the context of the group, it's probably between them and Oregon. Dylan Brooks on this team totally thinks that he's a 30-point scorer. And like,
Oh my God.
he would definitely be the guy taking or trying to take a lot of the crunch time shots,
Yeah.
which worries the heck out
Not
of me.
great. Not great.
Great. Like, and also I mean, they're big. Oregon's got some size. They've got Sabonis. They've got Hartenstein, who's a pretty good player. Drew Eubanks is solid. Kevin Love, at this point in his career. They're just, to me, I don't think that they're athletically comparable. Even with Illinois, that isn't the most athletic team, I don't think that they're athletically comparable or capable enough to advance past that team.
No depth, too. I think they have 7 or 8 total players. Peyton Pritchard's the only point guard. He plays like 12 minutes a game right now, and suddenly he's thrust with the entire state's hopes and dreams. Like,
if Illinois plays against Oregon, Pat Bev is getting Dylan Brooks ejected and himself ejected first 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
And Illinois has other players that can play basketball. Yeah. Oregon does not. So
that's so good, man. That's so true. All right, so we're sending Illinois through as the second place finisher.
I love it.
All right, our sixth and final group: Florida, California, Arkansas, and New York. So, where do we start here? Do we just talk about California as an all-star team? We're probably going to talk about them a lot.
I feel like we're going to talk about California a lot. So maybe we just say California is going to win the group.
Yeah. So everyone listening, California has literally an entire team composed of all-stars or former all-stars pretty much. Damian Lillard, James Harden, Drew Holiday, LaMelo Ball, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Klay Thompson, DeMar DeRozan, Brook Lopez, Evan Mobley, Nikola Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, and DeAnthony Melton. So 11 out of those 13 guys have like been all-stars in the past or like fringe all-star territory. So I think it's safe to say they're moving on from the group and they're one of the major favorites.
They're one of the favorites. That's going to be interesting discussion when they play. I mean, they're the heavy favorite entering into the tournament.
Yep. So I feel like Arkansas is coming in last. They were one of those like playing teams that I'd imagine in Malik Monk, like Bobby Portis, and I think Austin Reeves was on that squad.
Yeah. I like
guys, but they're not.
I like their starting lineup as like Malik Monk, Austin Reeves, Isaiah Joe, Jalen Williams, and Bobby Portis, which, they have no real initiator of the offense. They have some fun guys on their team, but that's like the type of roster that the Thunder throw out there when they're trying to intentionally lose a game. They have no shot.
Yeah, they're coming in last. Okay, so it comes down to Florida and New York for second place,
which would be that would be an intense game.
Yeah. So Florida has Joel Embiid. A little bit controversial. I could have thrown him on Kansas and lifted that team up. I mean, if Joel Embiid's on Kansas, do they make it out of the Group E over Illinois? Maybe.
I think they probably. Well, I don't know. No,
Embiid's that good, but
because Anthony Davis would be able to neutralize Embiid enough that Kansas wouldn't have enough around him. But
and so I wanted to put Embiid on a legitimate team, right?
Yeah.
I think Florida's that team.
Fits.
So they got Anthony Simons as a point guard. That'd be interesting if he's ready to kind of take that next step on a big stage. Their wings are pretty good. RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Grayson Allen, John Collins. Do I even say Ben Simmons anymore?
I was going to say, are you just going to skip over him? Because you probably should.
Yeah.
I don't even know that he needs to get brought up.
They got Al Horford, too. 2-time national champion at the University of Florida.
He's also just a winner.
Absolutely.
Like he's the guy. I mean, he's just a winner. This team is probably the team with the best depth inside. Even more than, maybe even more than California. California's got, Mobley, Vucevic, and Lopez, which are all elite guys, or high-level guys. When you factor in how elite Joel Embiid is, and then how just solid Al Horford is and what Mitchell Robinson could bring to the table too. Like this is arguably the best rim protector group of guys.
I like it. Like when I wrote the article, I wasn't even really thinking about Mitchell Robinson that much, but what he's been doing for the Knicks lately, I mean, he's really opened my eyes. He's taking his game to the next level. Speaking of the Knicks, so the New York team.
Yeah. If you think about
all the baggage.
Yeah. Scrappy. They're scrappy. I'd say if I one word to describe this New York team, I would say is frisky. Like that's the word that comes to my mind. And I wouldn't want to play those guys in like a 1-game setting. Their starting lineup is probably Donovan Mitchell, Kevin Huerter, Terrence Mann, probably Tobias Harris, and I don't know who would start at the 5. Isaiah Stewart, maybe Thomas Bryant. They'd have to play somebody big to match up with Embiid.
I think Danny Green or Kyle Anderson would get the start over Terrence Mann in my book.
You think so? I like Terrence Mann, but you probably are right. Kyle Anderson's been playing pretty well lately.
Kyle Anderson's solid. Their wings make a little bit more sense in terms of guys that can really shoot the ball, but aren't giving up like a ton of size on the defensive end. Like Florida's weird. They got RJ Barrett and Scotty Barnes can defend, but they're iffy shooting. And then they have like Grayson Allen who can shoot but can't defend. I just feel like I'd give the benefit of the doubt to the best player when I see the teams as this close. And Joel Embiid's the best player.
I think that's a fair assessment to make.
Yeah.
I think that it's hard for me to New York fans of New York basketball would probably be pissed off. They've got scrappy guys on their team like Jose Alvarado. I wouldn't want to be in a fight against those guys, but I also I don't see how they're. I think you're right. I don't think that they can slow down Embiid, and Florida's just too good. Florida's got a pretty balanced team.
They're solid.
If you're saying Anthony Simons is going to be a good player, good enough to be the main initiator, like they're a really sneaky, fun team, and they've got a pretty damn good starting 5.
Agreed. All right, man. So we're down to 12 teams. It was totally luck of the draw as to who got the bye. So if you won Group A, B, C, or D, you got a bye. Poor Group E and F, the winners have to play an extra game. We don't make the rules. The bracket
makes the
rules.
Does.
So, all right. First time we're looking at these matchups. Let's see. So South Carolina getting the bye is huge. As a team,
it's huge, man. The short 7-man rotation, that's huge.
Yep. Texas gets the bye. That seems fair. Michigan. Man, Washington lucks out. They get a group with Kentucky, Tennessee, and Massachusetts, and then they get a bye.
Well, their luck's going to run out here pretty shortly, but they did luck out to get to the final 8.
Yep. So let's go through those kind of wild card matchups first. So Tennessee versus Ohio.
I mean, it's hard to not pick LeBron.
Yeah.
In a matchup when, Tennessee, we were like, well, we like but don't really love their team. They got the benefit of the doubt of being in an underwhelming group. I think in a 1-game setting, they're not able to beat LeBron. You're not running Garrison Matthews out there to go take down LeBron.
Yeah. No, I think it's enough said. I'm good with pushing Ohio through. North Carolina, Florida is a sick matchup.
So I can't think of it off the top of my head. Like what has happened or what usually happens in Bam Adebayo, Joel Embiid matchups? Like is Bam capable of staying with Embiid, like of competing? Because I think North Carolina is a really damn good team. We talked about one of their weaknesses is how they're a little bit undersized. And Florida has some size and some length. They would, they're going to get beaten at the guard position, but they have Scotty Barnes. They have RJ Barrett. They've got some guys like that, like John Collins. It might be a little bit difficult for North Carolina to match up inside with them because Bam's going to have to be guarding Embiid. And if Bam gets in foul trouble, they have absolutely no depth to defend against.
That's my bigger worry. I feel like Bam can check Embiid to the extent that you can check Embiid, which is slowing him down but not stopping the guy. Like Miami beat Philly in the playoffs last year, and Embiid had a bad series, largely because Bam is a great defender. But yeah, if he gets in foul trouble, who are they? I mean, it's going to be PJ Tucker on Embiid trying to Jedi mind trick him or Grant Williams. Although those guys do have a propensity for defending players that are way bigger than them and kind of holding their own. And I like that North Carolina has that as like a trick up their sleeve.
That would be just such a size versus skill and like matchup that I could really see going I could really see that going in either direction. That would be a very balanced game.
I guess my question to you is, do you feel like the advantage that Florida has with Embiid over Bam is greater than the advantage that North Carolina has with Steph and Chris Paul over Anthony Simons? And I mean, who would be the other starting guard for Florida?
RJ Barrett.
Yeah, like RJ Barrett. I feel like North Carolina is the right type of team to spread a team like Florida out that's going to rely on its size. And if they were hitting their threes, I mean, the game could go in a bunch of different directions, as you're saying. But I could see North Carolina like blowing Florida out too. Or I could see the game being super ugly, a rock fight, and Florida sneaks it out. But I just think if you simulated it 100 times, I'm going to go with North Carolina's strength in shooting as a greater strength than what Florida's bringing to the table with, size and matchup flexibility.
I think that's fair. I think that I think if we were playing this in a one-game single elimination scenario, I could see the game playing out in a variety of different ways. But I think if we were playing this out as a series, or if I had to say, like, who do I think is the better team, I think North Carolina's the better team. So I'm cool with advancing North Carolina and Joel Embiid having another crushing defeat.
Like, what narrative do you see more likely to happen? A good thing happening to Steph Curry or a good thing happening to Joel Embiid in the playoffs?
But it's also a good thing happening to Chris Paul.
Now that one broke my brain. I don't know where to go.
let's stick with saying Steph is gonna find a way to bring it home.
Well, and we can talk about the Chris Paul curse in their next round because they're matched up with Texans. Okay, California, Illinois, I think is a no-brainer. California is going to destroy them.
We barely had Illinois advancing out of a relatively weak region. I think that California, that's not going to be difficult for them.
Yep. Poor Anthony Davis. I mean, Anthony Davis might be in street wars by that matchup. You never know.
This is a really interesting matchup right here, Georgia versus Maryland.
So we didn't really talk about Georgia that much because I think we both imagine them as a team with the potential to go really far. But getting KD as your first matchup, damn, that's a tough draw. So
I like Georgia, man. I like Georgia, and I like them in this situation against Maryland. I think that Georgia, let's just take California out of the equation. I think Georgia's probably got the most depth defensively of any of these teams. They have Brogdon, Davion Mitchell, Jaylen Brown, KCP, solid, Jay Crowder, Wendell Carter, Walker Kessler, who's been incredible protecting the rim. So from a depth perspective, they have a lot of guys that I think that they could throw at KD. And then you have Ant and Jaylen Brown, who can both be go-to scorers in this situation with other guys like Colin Sexton can score. They have got some good shooters in Devin Vassell and Malik Beasley, guys that can spread the floor. I think that Georgia's ability to rotate a bunch of guys and give Kevin Durant a bunch of looks without there being a ton of guys around KD in this situation, I think that Georgia would advance.
Yeah, I think you've convinced me, and I'm thinking about it kind of like how the Celtics flipped the script on the Nets in the playoffs last year. It was like, I think we all agree Durant is the best player in that series, but the combination of Tatum and Brown was the best combo, and two is greater than one. And I feel like the same math works in Georgia's favor in this series with Anthony Edwards and Jaylen Brown. So combined with that, they're better. They have better depth across all three levels. I would have – I can't knock Georgia out this early, and it sucks to knock KD out, and it's going to be an incredible game. But Maryland, KD had a tall task with that Maryland team, and I just think he draws a wrong matchup here.
The drop-off between the next best player on that roster, they've got good role players, but there's no real next best guy. And Kevin Durant has been as incredible as he's been in his entire career, but he has not won a championship or won titles without having other star players alongside him, right? Like, and in this situation, I think that, I just don't think they have enough star power to advance.
Yeah. I mean, this is proof of why this tournament needs to be a real thing, because Joel Embiid and Kevin Durant didn't even make the final 8 of this projection. Talent is spread across this country. And this tournament could be so exciting with the different matchups and ways that it could play out. I mean, there'd be so much parity in this thing.
Yeah,
I know on paper some teams probably stand above the rest, and we'll talk about it. But in reality, basketball doesn't work that way sometimes. You might have a great roster of 13 players, but it really comes down to 7 or 8 guys carrying the load. Who's got the best 7 or 8?
So speaking of your best 7 or 8 guys, South Carolina is a team that we've talked about really liking the top part of their roster and talking about how they needed to get some lucks of the draw, but that they were good enough to make a run in this tournament. If I'm sitting here looking at them in the final 8, I think that they should be favored over Ohio in a one-game situation with the top-end talent that is Ja Morant, Zion Williamson, Chris Middleton, and even Nick Claxton protecting the rim, who is a pretty solid defender, pretty solid rebounder.
I'd say more than pretty solid. That guy's
he's been playing great.
Defensive Player of the Year one day. He's great.
I think that South Carolina has a better team overall than Ohio does, even with only 7 guys on it.
Yep, I think they got lucky getting the bye too, so a higher chance that they won't be suffering any attrition heading into this matchup.
Yep,
they don't necessarily have a great guy to throw on LeBron defensively, but if you flip it the other way, Ohio doesn't have any of the wings that are going to be able to guard Zion.
Right.
They don't CJ McCollum's a sieve. Ja's going to destroy them. LeBron is 38 years old. He's not the defender that he once was. I think we got to put South Carolina through.
This is probably the last time we'll talk in depth about South Carolina, but I was thinking about this exercise earlier. If you had the starting 5 of Ja, Chris Middleton, Torrey Craig, Zion, and Nick Claxton, is that a top 5 starting 5 in the NBA right now?
It might. I think if it was, it'd be closer to 5 than 1, just because the version of Chris Middleton we've seen this year is not the version we've seen in years past. And he's slowly ramping up. So if we assume by the playoffs he's really Chris Middleton again, I think there's a better argument for it. The shooting, the spacing and the shooting would be clunky.
Yeah.
That's
a good point.
The big reason why Memphis is struggling lately is because Ja can't shoot threes. He's not going to reach his ceiling as a player until he learns how to shoot. Zion can get away with it. His problem is obviously just staying healthy. Torrey Craig, any lineup with,
I think you're right.
Starting 5 with Torrey Craig, I can't default say they're a top 5 lineup, even though the star power on paper is amazing. And going back to Nick Claxton, Chris Middleton's the bigger name, but Nick Claxton, as far as how players have performed this season, is clearly the 3rd best player on this team right now. Clearly.
You convinced me pretty quickly that I'm dumb because this team doesn't have the shooting and spacing to consistently be beating people, like that. It wouldn't be a starting five that it, as individuals, Torrey Craig aside, as individuals, it's a really good starting five, but collectively over the course of like a season or something. But I think I will say in this instance, in this game against Team Ohio, who I'm not that high on, I think that they would and could beat Team Ohio.
Yeah. I mean, I almost started to convince myself the other way and talking about South Carolina's like shooting problems, but I think they have such an athletic advantage in that game other than LeBron that I'm good putting through. It'd be devastating for LeBron in Ohio, but it can only be one winner. And this, of every draw, this is probably the toughest. Like North Carolina getting Florida in the wild card round and then Texas in the Elite Eight. I mean, the fact that one of these teams isn't going to make the semifinals is crazy. But which team is it going to be?
I think that it's Texas that wins this game, and I think in large part it's because I think that Marcus Smart and Jimmy Butler are the difference makers. I think that you can throw them at Steph and Chris Paul and consistently just beat them up, frustrate them, run a bunch of other guys at them. Kate Cunningham has size. You can put him on him for a little bit of time. You can switch with Siakam. You can put Alex Caruso out there to frustrate them too. And they also have some depth inside with Jared Allen and Miles Turner. And so, like, to guard against Bam, you can go small and play Siakam at the 5. But you can also go big and force somebody like Grant Williams or PJ Tucker to be guarding Siakam, Julius Randle. I don't think that they have anybody that can defend Jimmy Butler. I think Texas is the deeper team.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I hate that I'm bringing so many of these points back to the Celtics, but I think about the finals last year, where the Celtics were the deeper, more talented team, but like Steph, like Steph is the best player in this game. He's better than Jimmy Butler. Marcus Smart's a great defender, but he got torched by Steph in the finals. So I feel like Texas is the better overall team, but we know what Curry is capable of doing. And it's not like he's got a great team around him too. This is such a tough one. I'm just trying to think of like a matchup angle that sways me one way or the other. I like the wings that Texas have are more convincing and flexible and dynamic to me than what North Carolina has. I think you made a great point about if anyone's going to be able to get after Steph and Chris Paul, Marcus Smart and Jimmy Butler are two of the better options. Bam versus Texas's bigs would be really interesting. I mean, I think we have to go Texas, and it comes down to depth. There's less ways I can imagine Texas losing. I can imagine North Carolina losing if Bam gets in foul trouble and the defense falls apart.
Yep, I would agree. Texas is really deep, man. When we're genuinely asking if Trae Young should come off the bench, and like I mean that, like unironically, like I could see a scenario where Trae Young is not starting on that team. You know that they're a really good deep team, and I mean I think they'd make a long run in this tournament.
Yeah. We can breeze through the next one. Washington, extremely lucky to get to the Final Eight. They got an easy group. They got a bye. California
buy some stock in Washington from the perspective of Paolo. DeJounte Murray's still pretty young.
Yeah.
But they're lucky. They're lucky to be here. They're lucky with their draw that they got, and they are no match for California.
No, you're right. I was dismissive. Like, they're a team that is capable of making the Elite Eight, no doubt. It's just when you start talking about the cream of the crop and the fact that Washington had to win, who did they have to beat in their group again?
Nobody really difficult.
Kentucky, Tennessee, and Massachusetts. Yeah. That's where I feel like they're lucky, right? I could easily see them getting to this point, but they meet their maker here.
Yep.
All right, this is a great game. Georgia, Michigan. Two teams that neither of them are led by like a top 10 player in the NBA, but top to bottom depth at all three levels. I really like both of these rosters, and convince me one way or the other who's winning. I think I know where you're going to go. I think you're going to go Georgia, and I think I'm going to agree with you, but I'll try to play devil's advocate.
Yeah, I am. I am going to go Georgia. I just love the thought of this being Anthony Edwards' coming out party. Like, couldn't you just envision him taking this team and in this tournament environment, like similar to how Carmelo was just such an elite alpha during the Olympics, and like maybe Ant is one day himself too. But like, I just had this vision of Anthony Edwards would be first team All-America's Cup, no question. But I just love Georgia's depth. I think that Georgia has enough scoring between Ant, Jaylen Brown. They have good enough shooting depth with Vassell and KCP, like we talked about. But I just love I love their depth defensively, and they would be able to throw a bunch of guys at Devin Booker between Brogdon, Davion Mitchell. You put Jaylen Brown on him at times. And if you're able to slow down Devin Booker and make the rest of these guys around him beat you, is Franz Wagner there yet? Draymond, he's not going to beat you offensively. And you look at the rest of these guys that would be seeing the floor for Michigan in a situation: Monty Morris, Ed Sumner, Duncan Robinson, Isaiah Livers, Bryn Forbes. There's nobody there that I'm afraid of offensively. And I think ultimately, while Michigan has size, and I think that, they have a pretty solid starting group against a team that has depth at all three levels like Georgia does, I would find it hard to believe that Michigan would be able to overcome that.
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. Georgia is on another level athletically than Michigan. I think Franz being, how old is he? Is he like 21?
Yeah, I think he's like, well, let me,
22 maybe. The fact that he's that young if we have an America's Cup in 2027 and Franz is at like his all-star peak with Booker, could be a different conversation. But for this tournament, I just think I trust the combination of Edwards and Jaylen Brown more than Booker and Wagner. Now, Draymond would be ready to stir some shit up with, we saw him do it to Jaylen in the finals when he stepped over him. I think it was in game 2 or pulled at his shorts or something. It was weird, but he got in his head. And Edwards kind of seems unflappable to me. I don't think he would take Draymond Green's bullshit. Pardon my French.
I think he'd love it. I think he'd love it.
Yeah. So I'm with you. Georgia in the Final Four.
It's a good team.
So, man, we got South Carolina making us not necessarily a Cinderella run, but coming into this,
kind of a Cinderella story. They are kind of the Cinderella.
A little bit. I definitely didn't imagine having them in the Final Four coming into this, but the bracket played out in their favor. Texas, California, we expected to be there. To an extent, we expected Georgia to be there too.
If only Sindarius Thornwell was still on the South Carolina roster.
Yeah,
they might win the whole thing, but unfortunately, he's not in the NBA anymore.
Yeah, and to respect their privacy, I won't say their name, but I can think of some South Carolina alumni. They held open tryouts that can help this team out.
Yeah. Whew.
Man.
All right. In this game specifically, we talked about how South Carolina is overwhelming people with their athleticism. They're really good in short bursts with the group of guys that they have in the starting lineup. You convinced me in talking about it, about the lack of spacing and the lack of shooting that they would have. And in this situation against Texas, a team that can match up with them athletically, guys that are as equal. John Moran is freakish of an athlete as exists in the NBA, but De'Aaron Fox is just a notch below that athletically from a point guard perspective. And then you have guys that can rough it up with them defensively, like we've already talked about. But I think that Texas just has too much depth, too many different options that they can go to in this situation. And they have enough size to be able to compete and battle down low with Zion, with Nick Claxton, South Carolina's magical run to me, it ends.
Yeah. I really don't have much of an argument. Texas is deeper. They have the star power to contend with South Carolina that Ohio didn't, other than LeBron. I just think if there's any team that can wear you down and like, I'm not going to say like purposefully knock a guy out, but like this just feels like the game where the injuries would start piling up for South Carolina. The bumps and bruises would just become too much to overcome. So I agree. I mean, when I was doing this exercise, South Carolina was not a state I was thinking of as having a team, like fielding a team that was this competitive. But, making the Final Four would be as massive an achievement for the state from the America's Cup context as it was for them to make the Final Four as a university. So
if you're a young buck in the state of South Carolina right now and you can shoot, get in the gym, put some shots up, because you got a core of Ja, Zion, and Nick Claxton who are going to be around forever. All they need around you, baby, is they need some shooting. We need some shooters to come out of the state of South Carolina in the next few years, and this could be a team that could bring this thing home at some point in time.
Yeah, like they almost need like a booster, like a bunch of boosters to pay that lethal shooter guy on Instagram. They need to like pay that guy, like they need to give him like a $100 million contract to just train every single person in the state to become a lethal shooter.
What's the guy's name who's on South Carolina right now who's like supposed to be a pretty high draft pick, like Michi Johnson or something?
Yeah, I don't know, man. You're the college basketball expert.
Yeah, I think his name's Michi Johnson. I think no, he's not.
He would probably help, but I mean,
I don't know if he's what I'm thinking of. He's not. He's definitely not the guy that I'm thinking of. We're doing this.
I thought it was like GG Jackson or something.
That's who it is. We're doing this live.
His name's GG Jackson.
Gregory Jackson from Columbia, South Carolina, but he's a big man. He's 6'9". We're doing this live. I'm the college basketball guy, but South Carolina's 11-20, and other than the game where they played against Brandon Miller post shooting incident, I haven't been watching too much Gamecocks basketball.
Why did we have to bring Brandon Miller into this, man? Okay, well, before we go down that road, California, Georgia, what a great Final Four game. But is Georgia really going to hang with California? I mean, hang, sure, but like at a certain point, like you have Jaylen Brown. He's an all-star. Well, California has Kawhi Leonard, who's one of the greatest wing players of all time, right? Anthony Edwards, great perimeter scorer. Damian Lillard, dropping 70, It just feels like it's an anything you can do, I can do better situation.
Is this not like an Argentina versus the United States level matchup? Is Anthony Edwards going to be the Manu Ginobili that upsets the United States?
I thought you were talking soccer for a second. I was like, whoa, they're a little closer than that. But no, now I get it. I
mean, probably not, but crazier things have happened. You have all these stars on California's roster, and over here is the state of Georgia, who's got guys with great role definition. You've got rim protectors. You've got your scorers. You've got your defensive guys. You've got your ball hawks and Davion Mitchell. There's a lot that you can throw at them. I don't know.
What we haven't talked about with California? I think it's the single best roster question that can be posed. It's better than the Trae Young one. Are we sure James Harden's starting on this team?
No, he's not.
He's not. It's got to be Lillard and Drew. It's got to be Lillard and Drew if we're trying to win a big game.
All right, read to me your starting five. We'll have this conversation right now. Read to me your starting five in the state of California, because I got mine written down, and I can't wait to see what yours is too.
I would go Lillard, Drew Holiday, Kawhi, Paul George, and Brook Lopez.
We were so close. I put Evan Mobley instead of Brook Lopez. But I have Dame, Drew, Kawhi, Paul George, and Evan Mobley. Like, what a freaking roster.
Yeah. Klay Thompson and James Harden.
James Harden does not start.
DeMar's not even sniffing the court.
DeMar's like the 12th man. I started doing a second team.
Yeah.
I started doing a second team, and I said, okay, does the second team of LaMelo, James Harden, Clay, probably DeMar, but maybe Aaron Gordon at the 4 and Brooke Lopez, like, does that team make the Final Four in this tournament? Very possibly.
Very
We might have to
possibly.
break up California into a North and a South. Like,
I like
they're
it.
going to have a Northern and a Southern California for the America's Cup.
Frankly, those have always felt like two different states anyways, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I'm glad we're on the same page about that. But
Yeah.
to answer the question, California is beating Georgia unless Ant Edwards pulls a Manu and Team Georgia rallies around just the young up-and-coming superstar. I feel like Ant Edwards represents the state of Georgia. You know, like Anthony Edwards just screams the state of Georgia to me, and it's disappointing that he's gonna come up short here in the Final Four.
Final Four is
Ant could lead these guys to the title at some point in the future.
Yeah, I mean we're honestly showing him more respect throughout this simulation than he probably has earned at this point. But kind of like what we were talking about in episode 1 with like the player ceilings, he's just got that it factor that makes you believe he has a higher ceiling to get to, like a ceiling where he could be competing as like the best player in a tournament like this. So respect to him. Jaylen Brown, I mean, is a dog. I love that Georgia team. I just think anything that would scare me about like James Harden in California, like Harden could just get benched, you know, and they have 7 other All-Stars to pull from. I wrote about in my article, one of the few factors I could see sinking this team was LeVar Ball going absolutely ballistic when he realizes that LaMelo Ball is not going to play a minute in a big game here. Like he might get to play in one of the group games when who was in their group again? I can't even remember. So LaMelo gets to play against Arkansas.
Yeah, Florida, Arkansas.
Yeah. When they're up by 50 against Austin Reeves in Arkansas, then LaMelo gets in there, you know. But my worry with them is more chemistry than anything. Talent, undeniable. And it always had to be California versus Texas in the finals. The only way this wasn't going to happen is if they ended up on the same side of the bracket prior to that. I'm glad it turned out this way.
Yeah.
I think these are the two best teams. Thinking about who would actually win here is going to break my brain, honestly. Like, California has more talent than Texas. I don't think that's really an argument. Texas does just kind of have like a toughness factor to them, though, along with being incredibly talented. Something about them that makes me think they could maybe in a 1-game scenario, like get this California team to blink and steal this thing. Like I want to pick them.
Yeah, you have to really talk yourself into it.
I'm trying to talk myself into it.
But here's the thing. I mean, Texas is talented enough that they could do it, right? Like they're facing off against an all-star team, but they're talented enough that they're a mini all-star team themselves, just on a little bit lower level than the California all-star team. But all of those guys on the floor for Texas would be competent and capable of battling it out with Team California. Here's the real question that you got to, I mean, people are starting to ask. If you look at Bill Simmons' trade value column, which we've referenced a couple times, the highest ranked California player is 21st, Dame Lillard. They have no players in the top 20 in the trade value column. So here's my question to you, Dave. While California currently looks like a powerhouse, are they on the back end of their reign of terror before we've even been able to begin America's Cup?
Yeah, I like that angle. They are an older team. That's the main reason, right? From a
They're
trade
an older
value
team.
perspective, Simmons is valuing younger assets.
You look at all these guys we've talked about, right? Lillard has a history of injury problems. Harden has a history of injury problems. Kawhi, Paul George, Clay looks really healthy right now, is playing really great, but has a history of injury problems. Texas is a little bit younger. They're a little bit friskier. Maybe this is a game where you really try and push the pace. I don't know. You could do it either way. Like Texas is they have a style that's kind of conducive to playing in any way that you would like. But I don't know. We're ultimately, if California probably wins 8 out of 10 times, they'd probably be set as like 7 or 8 point favorites. But Texas would have a chance to win the game.
And I don't. I'm talking about. I'm building up Texas's toughness, but California's got dogs too.
Yeah. We're just
Holiday.
trying to downplay Cali right now.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to downplay them, but like Drew Holiday is as good of a big game guard as anyone. He terrifies me. Klay Thompson, 4 titles, like raises his level of play in the bigger moment. Kawhi. Now, on the flip side, the age thing would be huge because I think Texas would have a better chance of getting to this point of the tournament without suffering any major injuries. I think relying on Kawhi is a slippery slope. And that might be like if Kawhi is healthy in this game, California's winning. And I think we have to pick them to win the bracket because we can't assume for injuries to happen. But you're relying, like Kawhi is on paper the best player on this team. And that guy, we call Anthony Davis street clothes. What's Kawhi? Like, I don't have, like, this guy's been stuck in his apartment for like 2.5 years.
I think even with the star power that this California team has, it really speaks to the difference between an elite top 10 player in the NBA and the guys that are in that middle, like really, really, really good player range. Because if you take Kawhi off this roster, let's just say you take Kawhi off the roster and you plug in James freaking Harden. Okay. The California team is still loaded with star power, but you look at them a little bit differently. You go, okay, they're not as good defensively. They have more holes defensively. You're not going to trust them as much in big moments. I don't know. It kind of speaks to me when I think about that exercise of, well, what if Kawhi is not on this team? You don't have to get rid of like 3 guys. If you just get rid of 1 guy, it changes the equation a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Texas is bulletproof either. Like Julius Randle has a lot to prove from a playoff perspective. He's got pretty iffy shot selection in crunch time. Marcus Smart, definitely known for launching an ill-timed 3 or 2 in his day, despite bringing so many winning qualities. Like, I think we just have to assume both these teams are healthy, and there's no argument that California has the highest ceiling with like a player in Kawhi. Has anyone in Texas actually won an NBA championship?
I don't think so.
I don't
Doesn't
know.
look like it.
Let me look at it.
There's
Alex Caruso on the Lakers.
Oh yeah, that's right. I was trying to think of like what does this say it was a series or even just
one on the Raptors actually. So they do have some guys.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, what does this series kind of look like, or what does this game kind of look like? It almost, and maybe it's just Jimmy Butler standing out in my mind so much, but it would remind me a little bit of like the bubble Heat playing against the Lakers, where you just felt like the Lakers had the star power that was overwhelming, and you knew that the Heat's best chance was for Jimmy Butler to go nuclear and for the guys around him to play really well. But there was no chance, like they could maybe steal a game, right? But there was no chance that they were going to win the series. And it feels like if this was a 7-game series, California would win 4-1 or 4-2. But in a 1-game situation, Texas would have a chance in any one game because they do have good enough talent in a 1-game setting.
I think it's a good comparison with the bubble series, although I think the Heat would have given the Lakers a better run if Bam and Goran Dragic didn't get hurt in like game 1. But I think you're right. Talent usually wins out. The 1-game scenario would make this awfully interesting, though. I mean, who knows if either of these teams are actually getting there, like having all the pressure on them, knowing like a team like North Carolina could get hot in the quarterfinals. even like California versus Washington, they probably destroy them. But like, what if Zach LaVine had one of those nuclear games where he hits
Right.
13 threes? Like that's basketball. That's why when it comes to the NCAA tournament, we never have any clue what's going to happen because the one game scenario means the cream doesn't always rise. So
This was fun.
and
It's
this
it's
was
just
awesome.
such a fun thought exercise of it'd be awesome if this actually existed.
How long do we go here? I'm like, oh, 1 hour 20 is not bad, man.
Pretty good, man. That was loaded. That was loaded.
That
Chocolate.
was
We
a
even got a
lot.
couple of guest
I was worried
appearances.
it was going to be like 2 hours.
We got it. That was fun, man. We got a couple of guest appearances from Court. We talked about some fun made up scenario pools. Like, dude, this was great.
Yeah, this was awesome, man. Thanks so much for participating in it with me. I mean, if there was a better bracket, I mean, this bracket software ended up being all right. I mean, ideally, maybe in the future, we both try to build out our brackets individually rather than
Yeah.
collectively.
In the
I think
future, if
this
we had a
was
producer that had badass graphics that he was creating and was throwing stuff up on the screen,
Yeah.
maybe that would be better. But by the time that America's Cup actually exists, we'll have a producer. If any of you guys out there listening, one of the 6 of you, hit us up.
If you have a recommendation for who we can send like a petition to, someone with influence to make this tournament happen.
Dave,
ultimately, thoughts, man. Is it going to be us that's going to have to drive it? Two nobodies?
It has no. Here's the thing: we just become somebody's, and then we drive it.
That is the recurring theme here.
Yes. Hey, you know what this means with the end of this episode? It means that the next episode, we got some fun stuff coming, baby. Round 2.
Oh,
I can't wait.
Need revenge.
I cannot wait.
March Madness wins pool. We're still working out. We might have a special 3rd guest, maybe even a special 4th guest. But that's going to be episode 3. We're probably going to do it right after the selection show next Sunday. But it's basically everyone gets to draft a certain number of teams. We tally up the total wins that those teams get throughout the tournament. Most wins, wins the pool. So super simple. In a chaotic tournament like March Madness, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? John frankly kicked my ass last year. So I've had to go back to the drawing board, change my approach this year, and we will see what happens. But let's wrap this up, man. Thanks again.
Hey, this was awesome. This was a lot of fun.
Do it again soon, buddy.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was great. I love us just getting to catch up and talk about cool shit in the sports world. And hey, you know what? We're having fun doing it. We'd be doing it anyways. So it's cool that we're just finally like recording these conversations now and just posting them, and who the heck knows what happens from there. So
yeah, no, couldn't agree more. I mean, we'll get 10 views on YouTube for this, but it's better than the conversation just going into the ether of the millions that we've had throughout our lives. So I'm loving it, man. All right, buddy. We'll talk soon. See you, John.
We will. See ya.